if you're joining a workshop on graphic design, I'm guessing you've got an interest in it and you're probably quite good at it already. But even if you are, even if you're a great designer, if you haven't seen any of these fundamental guides or rules or tips, then it's always good to formalize it anyway. I'm going to be talking about just a few, like 6 or 7 main points today. And and I promise you, if that's all you take away from today's meeting, just these 7 or 8 little points, then I guarantee you it's going to help a great deal with anything that you work on, any design that you do. Anyone can do this. Very, very simple rules. Uh, and and from my experience, I am certain that this will.
Hello. Okay.
As you join, hello, as you join, I
Hello.
ask if you could please
One.
your mic and switch off your video. Thank you very much.
Give for repair.
That will make sure that everybody can hear me. So we've got Fiji traders and we've got Sabine.
When was it?
Your microphone's still
Yesterday.
on. I think I can mute you myself, actually. Let's just do that. Good, that's easier. Okay, I'm just going to keep admitting people as they come in and just talk a little bit more before we start the actual session. So I was just saying, this should be very simple. I've got just a few things to talk about, just 7 or 8 key points, and I will demonstrate them in detail with a lot of live examples so that you can really understand what I'm talking about. And then at the end of the session, you can take those points and every design that you work on from then, just refer to them. And over time, it just becomes natural. It becomes second nature. You don't even have to really think about it. So like, for example, when I see a design out there, I just instantly think, oh gosh, that needs to be moved over there. I don't have to think about the rules anymore. It just becomes fairly natural. But it's very simple and you'll be easily able to understand it. I promise anyone can work with this, and it's going to make a great difference to your work, I promise. But I'm very glad and very happy to have everybody joining. I think I'll just launch into it now. And if you have questions, pop them in chat, and I'll keep trying to check the chat and see what's there. And I'll try to incorporate questions into the today's presentation as we go along or where it fits. And if it doesn't really fit in, then we can have maybe a bit of time at the end that we can just talk about any questions that come up. So I was just talking a little bit about myself. My name is Chris Brimble. Like, why am I qualified to talk about this subject with you? Well, let's talk a little bit about my experience. Um, I started working in public libraries about 30 years ago. I worked in 17 different libraries around Sydney, and I found myself doing a lot of graphic design, even though that wasn't really what I was employed for. I was working on the posters, flyers, newsletters, and things like that. And then 15 years or so ago, I started working at Pacific Trade Invest Australia, and I've been here ever since. And I found myself doing the same things. I was working on the newsletters, and I was working on our website, and I was really enjoying it. Honestly, graphic design is by far the most satisfying part of my job. I really enjoy it. It's very rewarding. It's joining. And after a couple of years, I thought I really should make this formal and get some actual education. So I went to a really good design school here in Sydney called Shillington College, where I studied for 2 years. And the teachers there were just phenomenal. They were amazing. They would walk around behind us students working on our computers and they'd look over our shoulders and they'd look at what we're doing and they'd say, try moving that a little bit over there or make some space here or little tiny tips like that. And you had to learn to get over your pride, like the feeling, this is my work. I think it looks good. Listen to the teacher, do what they asked. And it was immediately obvious that they knew what they were talking about. Little things here and there made a huge difference. And so that knowledge, that information, I took into my work at PTI Australia. And over the last 10 years since I did that course, it really became clear to me that there are certain rules that are just really important to graphic design. Very simple rules. Thank you very much, the new people who are joining. Just I've just started talking a little bit about myself, and about how there's just a few simple little rules that I learned whilst I was doing my design degree that I have brought into my work at PTI Australia that has made all the difference. And over those years, I've thought about how I could distill that information into some simple rules that anyone can follow. And as I talk about them today, I will show some real world examples, and that will make it very clear to you exactly what I'm talking about. But for now, let me just tell you a little bit more about my work here at PTI. Let's go to the next slide. This is our most recent annual report. So this is just an example of some of the work I do here. It's nearly the end of 2024, so I'm going to have to make the next one soon. But this is the most recent one I've got. And it is a representation of balance, I think. Being a trade and investment commission, we are a serious organization. We're a corporate organization. We want to look professional and serious. However, the Pacific Islands is a very beautiful place. I've been lucky enough to go to a few places like Samoa, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, Fiji, New Caledonia. I've been to French Polynesia, and I'm very grateful for those experiences. And my my experience shows me that the Pacific Islands is a very vibrant and colorful place, a beautiful place, full of beautiful people, happy place. People wear colorful clothes, lovely, beautiful clothing, and the landscapes are just full of vibrant greens and blues and amazing tropical flowers. So I tried to bring some of that into my work, but it can't be too pretty. It can't be, it has to be a balance. So that's just a little bit. I work on this design, and then it gets picked up by the other offices around the world. So I'm really leading the branding and design of this organization. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about my background and my qualifications, and what I can hopefully give you today in just an hour and a half or an hour or so. I can't give you 2 years of design school and 10 years of experience in that time, but I feel like I've got a few good key rules here that will help anybody with your design work, no matter what level you're on. If you haven't seen these rules, if you haven't got them ingrained in your work, then this will really help you. And as I go through, there's just a few things to note down. You don't have to take a lot of notes. It's very simple, and I will go through each example with real life work that you can look at to help you understand what I'm talking about. I'm also a painter, oil painter. I like doing portraits and landscapes. I like to work with oil on canvas, and this process really taught me a lot about color theory. It's been very helpful. Understanding how the human eye sees colors, different colors in different circumstances, how they relate to each other. It's been very useful and has informed my work here a great deal. I know that a lot of you have probably seen the recent workshop by Asha, which was all about Canva and the tools that you can use in Canva to do your designs. I'm not going to talk about Canva today at all. I'm really just going to talk about a few simple things about where to put things on the page, not how to put them on the page. That was that technical course, and I'm just going to be talking about design only today. But I watched that workshop, I watched the recording of it, and it was great. So if you haven't seen that, you can get in touch and we can send you the recording. Can also send you the recording from today as well. We might even do that as a matter of course, just send out the link to everybody who's attended. All right, that's enough about me, I would say. I'm just going to quickly check the Zoom meeting and see if I need to get anybody else in. I can't even see the chat anymore. Let's see, maybe I need to click on this. Here we go. Great, I worked it out. Sorry, I don't use Zoom. We use Teams, but looks like everything's good. Got quite a few people in. That's wonderful. And everyone's muted. Once again, thank you so much for coming. I'm just so honored that you come and listen to me. Okay, let's dive in. This is my list of fundamentals. It's this simple. There's a couple more as we go along. but it's really this simple. Now, you might be looking at this page and thinking, oh gosh, this is awful. This looks horrible. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, that's on purpose. This page is meant to look bad because on this page, I've tried to break all the rules of the fundamentals that I'm going to talk about. Because this next page has the exact same information. I could probably make this full page now. Let's see. I'll just make this full page. I'm pretty sure you can still see my cursor, which is the important thing. So this page has the same information as this page. This page, you might think, oh gosh, there's a lot of design on this page. We've got lots of fonts. There's a lot of stuff going on. Someone's really worked hard on this. Well, this is a PowerPoint presentation. It's not supposed to look fancy. It's supposed to provide information. It's supposed to be easy to understand. And that's really what we're talking about today, is everything in this list of rules is designed to allow your audience to easily digest what they're looking at. We really are the director of the artwork. So we want to direct their focus and their eye and make it really easy to understand. When you put out your artwork into the world as a social media post or however you're going to do it, I'm sure you understand that when people are on social media, when they're looking at these things, especially if it's an advertisement, you're not going to get much time to grab their attention. So it has to be super easy to grasp. And that even just works for beauty in any kind of artwork. If it's confusing to the eye, unless you intend for it to be confusing, it's not going to look nice. So that's really important. And we'll talk a lot about that as well. So once again, each one of these fundamentals, I'm going to go through and show you real world examples that I found on the internet where just following the simple rules makes it look a lot better. But for now, I'm going to go in between these two pages to give you a quick introduction to this list. Hierarchy, that is the first one. And in a way, I feel like that's kind of the most important one when it comes to directing your viewer's attention. The hierarchy of information on a page, and by information, I mean both text and images, the hierarchy is really important. On this page, there's no real hierarchy. The only thing that kind of stands out here is the word alignment, and that's because it's thick. It's a big, thick font. It kind of stands out. Sure, there's a hierarchy of top to bottom, which is what people usually read things in, but that's it. If we go to this page, the hierarchy is clear. There are three main levels of hierarchy here. There's the top one. Whoops, I've gone to the wrong page. I wanted to highlight this. There's the top one, My Fundamentals. That's the title. It's very clearly the top hierarchy level. This whole list here is the second level. And then there's this third thing, just hiding over here, which is very low. It's the bottom level of hierarchy. I didn't really want anyone to even see that. I just sort of felt like the page looked a little bit blank, a little bit empty. If it wasn't there, I'm just trying to move that off so that you can see what I mean. I just popped it in because I thought let's free that up. But I didn't want it to compete with anything else on the page because it's really not important at all. I'm thinking about what's important on this page. This might seem very basic and simple and obvious to you, but it's worth thinking about. It's worth formalizing in your mind hierarchy of information. And this will become very clear as I show real world examples. In this page, I broke that rule. There's no rule hierarchy here. And some of the other points on here that I will go to actually are informing the hierarchy as well. For example, here, contrast. That's one of the things that shows you that this is the most important piece of information. Sure, it's a larger font and it's all in caps, but it's also a much greater contrast between the white and the dark background. This one here, this has got pretty good contrast. You can read it very well, but it hasn't got the same amount of contrast as the heading up here. So that pushes it down to that second level of hierarchy. And then this one has the least amount of contrast. If we go back to the messy page, there's not enough contrast here. The background, the middle thing, and the words in front, it's all getting a bit confusing. You can still read it, but we've introduced a sort of a roadblock for the mind, a hurdle for us to get over before we can understand the information. And we don't want that. We just want people to see what we want them to see. The next one on the list is alignment. And once again, I'm going to show you all of these with real world examples so you know what I'm talking about. This is nicely aligned here. This is also aligned, but it's aligned in the center, which creates this back and forth. And as a list of information, you really don't want your eye to be going, oh, where's the next one? Where's the next one? The next one. You just want it to be simple. And right now, I'd like to mention that you can break these rules. You absolutely can break them. You could put this over here. It's fine. It's not really aligned with anything. You could put it in the middle over here. It's sort of center aligned. It's all right. But down here, we've got the word intent. Now, the reason why that's there is because when you break a rule, you have to break that rule purposefully. You can't just have it like that. That's slightly misaligned and it looks messy. I think my way of thinking about this is like messy is okay, but it's got to look purposeful. I like my garden, for example, to be a bit messy. I don't like those perfectly trimmed, mathematically spherical bushes and things that you see in like French gardens and things like that. I like there to be leaves on the ground, but you don't want like maybe some messy grass here and there because that's not on purpose. That's just because I haven't pulled the weeds. It's like this. If this is just slightly off place, it just doesn't look nice to me. It has to be intentional. And I'll talk about that with real world examples as well. So we've talked about hierarchy, alignment, and contrast. Consistency is also very important. The way I broke it on this page is that we've got all these different fonts. This hasn't been capitalized. This is in italics. We've got a serif font here. That's those little bits that on the edge of these letters. Those are the serifs. These are all sans serifs. They don't have them. So it's just all messy and confusing. And so consistency in your text, consistency in your images, consistency in your layout, you will see how important that is. Once again, it's only 6 or 7 things to write down today. Follow them, and it will make a huge difference in total to what you're looking at when you do your artwork. We've got negative space. Haven't talked about that yet. That's also really important. On this page, we've got a nice, clear bit of negative space. There's a lovely bit of space around here. On this page, it's pushed up almost to the top. It's pushed almost to the bottom. It's the words, they can't breathe. It looks uncomfortable. It also confuses the eye. If you want to make an impact on your audience, on your viewer, making things bigger doesn't always work. It can sometimes work, absolutely, but sometimes making it smaller works even better. It's like it'd be very easy to hide in a crowd of people, but it'd be very hard to hide if you were standing in a field alone. You stand out more. This is what we're trying to get at here. So negative space, a very, very important concept to understand, and I'll show lots of examples of that today. I've also put a couple more here. These are intent and grouping really help you with the other rules. Grouping, I'll show you a little bit more about that as we go along, and intent I've already talked about. Okay, I'm just going to quickly check the chat. That there's some people. Oh, thank you very much for letting me know. Melissa, Charles, and also Melissa. Let's see, we'll get them joining. Thank you, Shamaran, for letting me know there's some people waiting to get in. I have to keep remembering to check this. Okay, for those who just joined, I'm sorry that you had to wait a while. I was just in the middle of my PowerPoint presentation and I didn't notice. Charles, still joining perhaps? Yeah, okay, great. All right, I'll just keep going. Okay, so I've talked a lot about these fundamentals, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you some real world examples. This one here is from a client that I worked with. Actually, I've worked with this client a few times, lovely man from Tonga. And he sent me this flyer on the left. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Slideshow from current slide. He sent me that flyer on the left and asked if I could make it a little bit neater. And I have to admit it was a challenge because there's a lot of information on that page and we couldn't lose any information. In fact, I had to add some information. I had to add the contact details which were missing. There was no call to action on this page. So we wanted people to be able to know what to do if they wanted to do one of these tours. So I actually had to add information onto this page. So it was actually a little bit challenging to make this neater, but by following just basic rules, and I'll refer to them now, the basic rules that I'm talking about, I have been able to, I think you'll agree, make it a little bit more professional looking and a little bit neater. So when I first looked at this page on the left, I was a little bit confused about which image related to which bit of text. I wasn't sure if it was this top and bottom or was it side to side. So that was the first thing I did. I grouped things together properly. I made sure that it was very easy to understand what was related to what. The hierarchy is okay, but it was difficult to follow. And normally I would really prefer to group things together by using negative space, grouping the things together that need to be grouped and then leaving some space around it. But there wasn't enough room on this A4 sheet to do that. So I just used some outlines and grouped it together that way. You can see here. I also thought that the consistency of spacing and alignment needed to be fixed up. We've got a bit of alignment, but it gets broken here and there. These two images are touching, these two are not. We're lacking a bit of consistency. We're lacking consistency of the font here. Some is in bold, some is not. The order of that information was also sometimes out of order. This block of text down the bottom here, that wasn't aligned in the same way as the rest, which is left aligned. This one was center aligned, and that created this weird sort of shape here. All these little things introduced clutter and confusion in the eye of the person watching this. So by neatening those little things up, I've got it all aligned here. I've tried to make all the spacing the same. I've put the information in the same order on each page. So you can see it just goes pick up, price, duration, destination. That's the same here, pick up, price. It's all the same. I'm actually looking at this now and noticing a couple of little mistakes I've made, but we'll talk about that at the end, about how when you come back to something, you'll see mistakes. I noticed that this image went to the side, but there was white space here, so I just lined that up. Another thing I thought about was that this is a flyer that you're printing. A lot of printers don't print to the, almost no printer that you'll ever find prints right to the edge. Usually a professional printer will print to near the edge and then cut. We can't do that here. So you may as well be in control of where the image ends. Don't leave it up to your printer to decide. And it also lines up nice and neatly here. So there's a few things, few small things from my list of rules that I introduced here that made it look a little bit better. I also made the logo smaller. That's another, just a little tip. A lot of people really think that they want to make their logo really big, but think about what it is you really want the audience to see. In this case, I think the images are really important. They're almost the top of the hierarchy here. People are looking at this, they want to know what the tours are about. They don't really care about your logo. So I made that smaller. Don't be afraid to make your logo a little bit smaller if you need the space. That's just a little tip. And then, of course, I introduced that call to action here as well. So this is just one example. I'll quickly flick back to the list of fundamentals and just refer to that, which is what I recommend that you do when you're doing your work. Have a little post-it note with these written on it next to where you work and just refer back and forth. So I thought that the hierarchy was actually okay. This is a tour company in Tonga, and this is the heading of each one. I felt that that font was hard to read, but I had to stick with it because that was their branding. So I found the closest font I could that matched. But the hierarchy in general was okay. The alignment, talked about that really needed fixing. Contrast, this has got heaps of contrast. It's very clear. There's nothing wrong with the contrast here at all. Negative space, that was a tricky one. It's very difficult to introduce negative space on this full page. So we worked with what we had. Intent and grouping. Well, these little errors here where this is touching and this is not, that's clearly not intentional. Make it all consistent and intentional, and it will look a lot better, and it will be much easier for your audience to digest quickly and understand, which is really what we're aiming for when we're doing this kind of design. Yeah, so that's this one. I've got a few more to go, and I'm just going to quickly go back and check, and hopefully nobody else is waiting. Oh, we do have someone waiting. Okay, so I'm going to admit Gloria, and once again, welcome to everybody who's joining. Really, really happy to have you all here. We've just talked about this one, and I'm going to move on to the next one. My original idea actually was to have some work that was done by the people who attended the Canva session, and that I would talk about their designs and see if there was anything from these fundamentals that would help. But there was nothing submitted. So I went out into the internet and I just looked for random bits of design work that I could find. I looked for things that were simple, that could be fixed fairly easily, just for the purposes of today's demonstration. I found a lot of work out there that was very complex and would require a lot of fixing, but I couldn't talk about that in just the time that we had. So I found a few different examples that I think are good for illustrating what I'm talking about. This one I found was a bike tour in Tonga. Now, there's a few things that immediately jumped to into my eyes that I thought could fix we could fix on this one. Um, so I first noticed about consistency. Let's see. Okay, so they've got the Tonga flag up here, and then they've gone with a red and white um, block of text here, which is, because they're the colors of the Tonga flag, right? But they're not really the same red. They're not the same whites either. So I fixed that by making them the same color. I also thought, well, this one's touching the edges, this one's got some space around it. That's not very consistent. So I made them both consistent here, enough space around each one. I also noticed that this has rounded corners and this is a square corner. So I made them both square. That made them line up nicely. I also changed the hierarchy a little bit. I moved this up to the top left, which is where people's eyes generally tend to go, top left. We've been taught to read that way, I guess. That's probably why. And then I made sure that there was enough negative space within this frame as well. Here, the words are pushed up to the top and the bottom, and they're sort of almost randomly placed. In this one, I made sure there was some alignment in this. There's a nice, clear, beautiful line here. I also purposefully lined up the N, the left side of the N with this I. That was on purpose. And I just thought about the way it looked within the shape. It's sort of like this was the first page that I had here on this presentation. This is called a type lockup. You can actually look at the shapes of words and you can find the way that they fit together nicely and come up with a bit of artwork just with the words. It's called a type lockup. So we've gone from this kind of random list of words here into something that's a lot more intentional and looks grouped. And yeah, so I thought that looked a lot better. And finally, image choice is important. The back of someone's legs is not necessarily the nicest thing to have on the page. It's okay. It demonstrates what you're talking about. Someone's riding a bike, but for a few reasons, I thought we could change that image. One is that the subject of the image is no longer competing with anything on the page. It's also much easier to understand what's there because there's a lot of negative space. Now, negative space doesn't have to just be blank. It means that there's a difference in subject. So here's the person, here's the beautiful landscape, and it's not competing at all with any of the words or any of the other graphic elements. So once again, I found this natural negative space that can go in there. Yeah, so I think that's all I was going to talk about with that one. Yeah. Now I'm just going to quickly check again to make sure nobody else is waiting. Oh, we've got Prakash waiting. Okay, Prakash, let's let you join and welcome. I'm going to go back to my presentation. So let's have a look at the next one. I'll just put them side by side so you can clearly see. I think one looks better than the other, and I hope that you agree with me. Very, very simple rules to follow, one at a time, and it just will make anything look better, in my opinion. Next. Okay, so I did a little bit more searching on the net, and I found this, I think this was Vanuatu. Yeah, and I thought this would be a good one to talk about. There's a few things on this one. Let's have a look at my notes. So, hierarchy. So just for those who joined more recently, I've got a list of fundamentals that I'm going to talk about with each one of these examples. And I'm going to go through each one on these examples so that you know what I'm talking about. Here, hierarchy, the hierarchy of information. Where does your eye go? Well, lunch special is clearly the first one. It's mostly okay. The hierarchy on this page is mostly okay. But you can see down the bottom, they've used this display font, which is kind of like a heading font. to just give the content, the contact information, the call to action, which really is probably one of the last things in the hierarchy that you want to show. So not only that, but you don't want to overuse your heading fonts. Be very careful about where you put them. They need to inform the hierarchy of the page. So here we've got lunch special, clearly the top hierarchy. It's mostly okay. This is probably number second here, number two. And then down here, you've got a heading on each one of these dishes. And just a little point here that I noticed, they've used all caps here on this font. This font is not designed at all to be used in all caps. You can see here it works quite well as a sentence case, but in all caps, it becomes confusing to look at. Once again, we want to make everything as easy to understand as possible. It adds to the beauty of it. Simplicity is beauty because it makes it easier for us to grasp when we look at it. Next page. Okay, alignment, another one of the fundamental rules. The alignment's actually not too bad, but it could definitely be improved and made more intentional. I've just put a few lines. You can see this line here shows that these are aligned. This line here shows that these are slightly misaligned. That definitely could be aligned better. Here, there's no alignment. Here, there's a sort of alignment that goes vertically. There's all sorts of things you could do to make this look a little neater, and I'll show you an example of that. But once again, very simple thing to fix up. Contrast. Okay, contrast. On this page, the contrast definitely needs to improve. Why? Because this background image, whilst it is pulled back a lot in contrast, it's been made brighter, lighter with the darks taken out. It's still fighting for attention because it's very complicated image. You've got dark, light, dark, red, yellow, green, dark over here, light over here, and it's a real confusion to your eye. So yeah, it's lovely to show that they've got nice pizza there, but it's just fighting for attention. We don't want that at all. So that's an example where contrast is not done very well. And the call to action font down the bottom here, once again, that orange, that dark orange, which is basically a brown, is also lost in the background. Consistency, another one of the fundamentals. So the display fonts, look at this display font at the top, this price in September. It almost looks like the one down the bottom, but it's different. So you could make these the same for simplicity. Always cut down on the number of fonts that you're using. Try to only use one, maybe two heading fonts, or as they're called, display fonts. And you can also see that the spacing around the edges is not consistent. Some of these is like pushing up against the picture on the right. And so what I did was, oh, there's one more page. So negative space, there's no negative space around this lunch special. It's pushed right up to the edges. You need more room around each one of these text groupings, in my opinion. You'll see why in a second. Like I was talking about before, you don't want to have to make everything big and fill up all the space. It's much better to create that negative space around it because it just makes it all a lot easier to see. I didn't really have the time to try to remove the background image and recreate this whole thing. So I just tried to demonstrate this on this page. Let me show this slide in full screen. So you can see that even though I've made these smaller, each one of these is actually smaller than what it is on the left. But in the end, it's neater, it's more professional. Just a tiny little change like that can make all the difference. Okay. I think we've talked enough about the lunch special, and I don't want to get too hungry because it's going to get to be lunch here soon. Before I go on to the next one, let me just double check and see if anyone's waiting. Okay, great. We're all here. Perfect. And I really hope you can all hear me okay. Next one. This is another thing I found out there on the internet from Samoa. And this is a very cluttered page. Every single tiny millimeter of this page is full of visual information. And it kind of hits you like a punch in the face. It's like, whoa, I can't understand what's happening here at all. What am I supposed to read first? New lineup week 1. I'm just going to go from the top. 2024 Pacific Championship final squad Fetu Samoa. I mean, it all looks equally important. The images, the pictures of the players also is competing almost equally for your attention. There's no hierarchy whatsoever on this page. It's just a complete schmozzle. So another thing about this one is that there is no consistency. Obviously, someone has put a lot of time and effort into making this look as designed and as impactful as they possibly can. It's the sort of thing that you would do if you didn't understand these fundamentals. So everything here has a different font type, a different color, a different background and text outline. It's so confusing. This is a white 2002 with a black outline that merges into each other on a red background. This one here, same, but it's also got a drop shadow and a yellow background that kind of gets lost behind that block shadow. And this is blue with a black outline on it. So you get my point. It's quite messy. And I would recommend just never using font outlines if you can avoid it. It's the sort of thing that works well for, say, like a meme on the internet where you just want to chuck some text over an image and make sure that people can read it. But it's like the laziest way of making something legible and readable. There's much better ways of doing it than making it confusing like this. So I just recommend against using that unless you really have to. I haven't tried to redesign this myself and make it look better. I didn't really have the time to do a design job on each one of these examples. So hopefully you could just bear with me and believe me that if you followed those fundamentals, you could make this look so much better very easily. And just double check the chat. We are all good, I think. Okay, carrying on. How are we going for time too? Okay, 40 minutes. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now, what I thought we could do is have a look at this one together and think about those fundamentals that I would like, what I was hoping that we would have noted down on a piece of paper that we can refer to as we go along: hierarchy, alignment, contrast, consistency, negative space, intent, grouping. And we'll go back to that example. So in chat, if you would like to, I'll give you a moment to have a look at this Father's Day message. And if you can see anything from those fundamentals that you think could be improved on this, then please just pop it into chat and I'll have a quick look and see. If I do that again, here we go. Okay. It's quiet in here. Are you all done? I'll be leaving in 1 minute unless I hear someone talking. Oh no. Can nobody hear me? Oh gosh. Can people say in chat if you can hear me? Negative space.
We can.
Oh, thank you. Great. Okay, so if you can't hear me, and I'll put it in chat. If you can't hear me, please check your speaker settings. Other people can hear me. Technical issues. Thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you, everybody, for your responses. Okay, yeah. Happy Father's Day. Text artwork can be changed. That's Amitesh. Thank you for that. And thank you, Tamada, for saying that you can hear me. Text artwork can be changed. So let's have a look. Yes, actually, that's a perfect suggestion. That text actually can be changed, and it is what I changed. You could change a lot of this on this page, but that text could be grouped up as I've done on the right-hand side here. It helps with the hierarchy. I thought it looked a little bit better to put the green text above because that seemed to naturally want to be the most important thing in this group. And by grouping it together, it helped a lot with that negative space. You don't want to just always fill up the space. It's great to group it together. Also, I noticed that the psalm number was also competing with the actual psalm itself. So I separated that through difference in contrast, making it not quite so bold. And then I pushed it off to the right. It's not aligned with anything, but it's purposefully misaligned. It's done purposefully. So I think it looks good. That's the only thing I changed. I did make this picture a little bit smaller to create a little bit more space. I would definitely move a few other things around. This thing's stuck down in the bottom left. I definitely would move that. There's a few things, but just as a quick example, yeah, that text, absolutely, that could have been made a little bit better. Let me double check the text again here, the chat. Color consistency from Rajneesh. And sorry if I'm not pronouncing people's names correctly, but color consistency. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, okay. So we definitely have a lot of different colors going on in here. I'm not sure if this green is I'd say that is the same green, so at least that's consistent. But it would actually have been nicer if this blue and gold image here could have worked a lot better with the colors that are part of the obvious branding here. And of course, we've got the flag up here. These flag colors introduce more colors as well. Maybe we could have used that blue and red over here for this image. Um, the person who created this obviously found this from some stock image that they found, and they popped that in there, which is fine if that's all you have access to. But if you're going to do a really good design job, absolutely. There's a bit of a messy color thing in here. And if we were a bit more consistent with the colors, that absolutely would have made a difference, 100%. So that's really good. Let's see if there's anything else in the chat. Let's see. Very hard to use Zoom. Okay, great. Nothing. Oh, we've got a few more people waiting, so I'm just going to add them in. Add and add. Hopefully there was no confusion around time on the advertisements, the invitations. I've got just a few more things to talk about here. Another one I found. Let's go to the next one. This is oops. Okay, so let's make this bigger. Okay, so I found this on the web. This was presented like this with these two flyers together. And once again, I'll just see if anybody has any suggestions. I'll let you have a look at it. If anything jumps into your mind, pop it into the chat and we'll have a talk about that. If not, I've got some things to talk about this anyway. So once again, let's have a look at the list of rules that I've got here. We've got, oh, it always does that. I don't know why. Hierarchy, alignment, contrast, consistency, negative space, intent, and grouping. It's all you need to know to be a fantastic designer, I promise. Let's go back. Okay, so alignment, contrast, consistency, negative space. What can we see here? Let's have a look at the chat. I think I can see things coming in. There's like a little notifications tab. Okay, pull this up. Here we go. Okay, we've got a lot. Okay, so how do I find what we're talking about here? It was after this one. Text alignment, Sophia, 100%. Grouping would have helped. Yep, 10 out of 10. Alignment, contrast, yet again, no negative space, horrible alignment, and no intent. Well, there you go. You guys are experts already. Okay, let's go back to the example. All of those are correct. And I may have even already put them in my notes here. So as an example, the alignment here, nothing on this side is aligned. Let's make it a bit bigger. That's not aligned with that. It's not aligned with that. Same up here. It's just not intentional. It's random and messy. There should be a consistency in the spacing. So this is pushed up close to that, but there's a lot of space here. This is also very close. This makes a line. And once again, if you're thinking these are tiny little things, why would you worry about them? Well, when you put them together, when you add them all together and fix it, it'll look so much nicer. It becomes much easier for your mind to interpret what you're looking at. Once again, we really need to make our imagery easy to be understood visually so that people don't swipe away from what you're trying to get them to look at. And in any artwork, confusion detracts from the beauty. Simplicity is really beautiful, in my opinion. So what could we have done here? The alignment, the consistency of spacing, these titles, how would we introduce some negative space around them? You just make them smaller, make them much smaller. Like I said before, making things bigger doesn't always make them more impactful. Sometimes making them smaller makes them stand out better. In terms of hierarchy, they're obviously going to be still number one in hierarchy because they're still up the top of the page. They still have the greatest contrast between the background and the foreground. And as long as you don't make them too small, they're definitely going to fit much better in that space. And also I noticed the pricing on the right-hand side was done differently from the left-hand side. And the pricing on the right stands out a lot better. So if you wanted that to be up higher in your hierarchy, if you wanted to push the prices as the main thing, then that's going to help a lot. The prices here, yeah, sure, they've made them bigger and bolder. That does help with the hierarchy, but they're still very close to the rest of the text. Here, they really stand out a lot more. I'm just going to quickly check back to the chat in case there were some other things. Nope, great. Okay. Well, this is working really well. Thank you, guys. It's fantastic. Next example. I found this one out there. Palolo. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's the salmon caviar. Never heard of it before. Sounds very interesting. Um, but what's on this page? Okay. Have a look. Think about those things we've been talking about. Hierarchy, alignment, contrast, and um, all the other different things that come to mind. Give you a moment to think about it and see if there's any. Oh gosh, I can see chats up the top here. That's good. That's helping. All right. So consistency in text. Yeah, there's no consistency 100%. Um, that's absolutely true. B, thank you. Oh, I think another one just came in. Sorry, I don't want to miss it. I'm really, really loving seeing everybody's input. It's just showing that this is working. So color confusion and no consistency in font. Contrast is pretty bad. Again, someone else is noticing problems with color. The insert shapes do not, absolutely, that's another one. And the photo is not very appealing. I have to admit, I thought so too, but I didn't say that because this is a delicacy, and so really that's quite subjective, but I kind of agree there. Alignment, shapes don't match. Yep, everyone's saying very similar things as each other and 100% correct. Negative space not balanced. This is wonderful, guys. Color too striking and confusing. Absolutely. Full marks class. That's wonderful. So let's look at what I thought as well. Yeah, so quite a few things I thought the same as you. There's inconsistency in the spacing, which I just demonstrated with this white line, but it's all over the place as well. Rounded and sharp corners, exactly what someone in the chat just said as well. Needs more negative space around the heading, the body, and also the seal, which I think, I'm not sure if somebody mentioned that, but that's true. The hierarchy is not too bad. You can actually tell which is, this is number 1, 2, and 3. It is really, there are other things competing, so that could be improved, but it's not too bad. There is a random alignment of text, quite random. Here, this is left aligned, then this becomes center aligned. So what would you do? A lot of those suggestions were great. I might actually increase this frame up to the top to include this heading. It doesn't really need to be separated. It's just adding to the confusion. This background image, the plants, the leaves, it's really relegated to the background, so there's no real need to try to show it around this text, so that doesn't need to really be there. I'd probably even try to push that background image back even further so it's right down the bottom of the hierarchy. You're right, a picture of worms, it's not that appealing to my mind, but I wasn't going to comment on that because it might be appealing to some other people. I don't know. And yeah, the random alignment of text imagery, it's just not consistent. It's not intentional. So yeah, I think I found a good example of something that could be fixed really easily by thinking about those various things. Just implement them. It'll look a lot better. I also wanted to make a quick note about gradients. As you can see, this box here, this text box, has a gradient where it goes from blue to yellow. And it's not a bad gradient as far as they go. Blue and yellow, as you might remember from kindergarten, color mixing makes green, right? Blue plus yellow. That's why you've got these nice greens, and it kind of goes well with the background, actually. But my teachers in my design school basically said to us, just don't use gradients. Unless you really know what you're doing, don't use them because they're hard to control. They introduce all sorts of visual information that can detract from what you're trying to do. It could definitely work sometimes, but you do have to know what you're doing. In this one, I can see lovely blues. I can see some darker blue greens, and then there's a green stripe here, and then a yellow thing up here. I'm not sure if all of that was intended. It doesn't really look like it was. It doesn't fit in with anything else on the page. It just adds a little bit of visual interest. Once again, simplicity is key. Don't keep trying to add stuff. It's not always necessary. Also, if you get it wrong, if you put the wrong colors in, it's going to look awful. And to demonstrate that, I just want to talk a little bit, just very quickly about colors. And I'm sure a lot of you know all about color theory already. And so as you know, you can mix green, or you can mix blue and yellow to make green, you can mix blue and red to make purple, etc. You've seen yellowy oranges, you've seen yellowy greens, you've seen bluish purples, and you've seen reddish purples. But I guarantee you, you've never seen a yellowish purple because they're opposites. What happens if you mix yellow and purple? What happens if you mix green and red? What the opposites? They call them complementary colors. I don't know why they call them that because to me they don't complement. Well, they make each other more vibrant if you put them next to each other. But if you try to merge them in a gradient, it's not going to work. You're going to get in the middle just grays and browns and muddy colors because you can't mix those colors. They just don't mix together. If you have seen a yellowish purple, if you tell me you have seen a yellowish purple, then I'm going to tell you that you're not human because I don't think our eyes work that way. So that's just a note on gradients. I'd recommend not really using them. They don't generally add much. They usually add too much, really, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Another example where there is a gradient, this is just a gradient between a lighter yellow and a dark yellow, which is fine. But I found this and I thought there's just a few things that we could improve on this. If you'd like to pop them in chat, I've got a lot of confidence in class now. I really think that you're going to be able to see very quickly what we could do just to make this a lot better. Um, this is obviously a tourism thumbnail. This was a thumbnail from a video. It was just, important. We're trying to grab your attention with the thumbnail of the video. Let's try to make it simple. Let's try to emphasize the hierarchy that we want to emphasize. So I'm just going to quickly check the chat. Really hope you can all still hear me and everything. Let's have a look. Okay, text consistency, no alignment, font touches the edge, yes. This chart is meant for painting. Absolutely. Thank you, Sabine. You're correct. 100%. Oh, there you go. Looks very appealing from someone's point of view. I knew it, right? I knew that would be the case. Um, background, okay. So we've still got some things coming in from that Palolo, is it Palolo image? Yeah. So quite a few from that Palolo, and they're all valid. Very, 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 very valid and correct. Absolutely. I'm going to go down to where it was from 1044. Text consistency, text alignments, font sizes and consistency in negative space, 100%. And Sabine says, I would use different colors. Well, guess what? I would too. I actually would very much use different colors. This color doesn't relate to the image at all. All those suggestions are absolutely on the money. What else have we got for the text part? Yeah. The triangle is harsh. Could not agree more. Couldn't agree any more than that. So let's look at what I said. You can make the text smaller to leave negative space. You can group the words and Comic Sans, this actual font here is Comic Sans. It's quite recognizable to me because the in my design school, they just said, don't use that font. It's become a joke. It's a bit of a joke in the design world. If you like it, use it. I say just use it if you want to. But just know that actually there's a lot of people who will notice that font and think, oh gosh, that's very amateur. So let's see, what did I do? I actually got rid of that triangle completely. I mean, the image is the selling point, right? Why would you hide half of it? So what I did was I just found where there would be a natural negative space for it that's not going to compete with the rest. I grouped the words together. I aligned it better. I thought about the hierarchy of those words. What are we looking at? I mean, don't need to do too much hierarchy thinking on this page, really. It's just what are the top 34 West Papua tourist spots, really. And a few small, tiny little changes. And I mean, I think it looks a lot better. I could definitely work on it longer and make it look even better. But yeah, very simple, very easy to do. So that's actually the end of all the examples that I had. So we've gotten to 1 hour in the presentation now. I do have a few more just general thoughts that I was thinking about with design. I want to emphasize, though, before I talk about those points, that really these are 6 or 7 things that when you're doing design, if you just have those, in mind, that's all you really need to make a huge difference. But I also did want to talk a little bit about color, a little bit about gradients, different font things as well, and a few other just general design ideas and points that I sort of thought of as I was making this presentation. So I'm just going to quickly check again before I talk about those. Checking simple. Oh, look. Look at this. I've got some lovely, nice feedback from you guys. I love it. Thank you. Oh, that makes me feel really nice. That's wonderful. Okay. All right. So just a few little things to talk about before we go to questions, if anybody has any questions. Inspiration. Sometimes when you're starting a design, if you want to do a design, I find it really hard to get started sometimes. If there's a blank page, it's really quite hard to get the first bit of paint on there. So the idea is to break that, is just to put anything on the page, try not to be perfect from the start. It's okay to just put anything on the page, anything messy, and it just breaks that barrier and you can get started. Another point about inspiration, there's a quote, you may have heard it, good artists borrow, great artists steal. I don't completely agree with that quote from Pablo Picasso, I think it was. I don't really agree with it. I don't think you should steal. I don't think you should just copy. I don't think that's particularly ethically sound. But the point is that every bit of artwork out there, whether it's graphic design, whether it's another visual type of art, whether it's music, whether it's poetry, it's all based on work that came before it. It's undeniably based on work. There's very, very difficult to be completely unique. So don't worry about getting inspired by other people's work. Have a look on Google Images. Make libraries of things that inspire you. Take their work, don't copy it, take their work and use it as a seed to allow your creative thoughts to grow and flower. So that's just a little bit about inspiration that I'm thinking about. Another point, staying fresh. If you work for a long time on something and you're up close to it and you're working on it, after a while, you stop seeing everything that's on the page. You stop seeing it from the perspective of your audience who are going to come to it with fresh eyes. So if you're putting a lot of work into something, it does pay off to walk out of the room, get yourself a cup of tea or a bowl of palolo or whatever it is, and come back and you can come back the next day. You can come back in 1 or 5 minutes. Doesn't take long. Come back and you'll see it with fresh eyes, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh gosh, I need to fix that. Oh, and that could be better like that. It really works. It even works just to step back, to get away from it and look at it from a different perspective. It helps our brains sort of refresh and see it again from fresh eyes. And I don't know why I put this point here, but once again, less is more. Simplicity. Simplicity in your color, not too many colors. Simplicity in your fonts. Probably go with one display font, one heading font only, and then one body font. It depends on how much hierarchy you need in your image. If you need a heading, subheading, and a third subpoint, you may want to think about different headings and stuff, different types of fonts, but always be as simple as possible. Don't fall into the trap of putting heaps of design into something. It can make it worse. Simplicity of elements, that means visual elements on the page, fonts, graphic design elements, pictures, anything like that. Try and be simplistic in your work. A few more general ideas. The size of things. You can sort of get trapped a little bit in your ways of thinking. I definitely know I can. So one thing you can do to break out of your own self-imposed limitations is you go crazy with your design. Make something way too big, what you think is way too big, and then dial it back from there. And it's just a nice way of finding your own balance. It can work with anything, whether you're trying to change the colors of a picture. If you think it looks a bit blue, bring it. If you're working on Photoshop, for example, I don't know if anybody does that, but it works with anything. So like with colors, if it looks too blue, bring it way back into the warmth, way too far, and then balance back and forth until to your eye it looks good. Don't try to creep up to where you think something looks good. Go past it, go big, and then dial it back. Consider tone, the tone of your message. This is something that I talked about at the start with the work that I do for Pacific Trade Invest. Are you trying to be friendly? Are you trying to be serious? What's the subject? Fonts have feelings. So the font choice really does matter. Um, Time is quality. It's very difficult to do good design work quickly. It will look rushed. There's nothing you can really do about that. I don't, unless you're doing a very simple design, it's very hard. So put the time in, but don't get too attached to the work that you've done. Remember, the work that you're doing isn't you. You have to demonstrate this. I thought of it something that my son does. He's 13. He's a fantastic artist. I'm super jealous and very proud. And he works on whiteboards. He's got like a whiteboard and he just draws on it. And he makes these really amazing character artworks. And then at the end of the day, he just rubs it all off. And it hurts me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's gone forever. But that's actually really healthy. So it allows him to be free. It allows him to try different things. And when you work really hard on something, you may fall into the trap of thinking, I need people to see this because I worked really hard on it. It's quite possible that it could look a lot better if you scrap that and start again. So don't get too attached to the work that you do is just a general bit of advice. Okay, so that's pretty much all of it. I wanted to put my email address here because I wanted to invite you, if you wanted to, if you're working on a design, feel free to send it through to my email address if you'd like me to give you any feedback on it. And I'd be happy to do that. Just a note though, I can really only promise to do that probably for one piece of artwork per person. I can't do that forever. Um, well, it just depends on whether or how much I get people sending me their work. That's fine. But there's my email address. Please take it if you'd like to get in touch. 100%. Very pleased to talk to everybody here. I love talking to other designers and creatives like you. And once again, I've just put this list here. This is really my list of most important rules that I've distilled from my work in design that I think that will help anybody improve their work very simply, very easily. So I'll leave that on the page. But I'd also like to invite you now, if you like, if you have any specific questions, you can put them in chat. Oh my gosh, Caroline, very sorry I didn't see you there. I'll just admit you now there at the end. But oh, Rajneesh, thank you. Thank very much. I've got a few thanks here. Yep, my pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming to the session today. Like I said before, you're welcome. Like I said before, this has been recorded. We'll send out the recording to all of you in case you're interested in seeing that again. And it's been lovely talking to you all, and I really appreciate all the feedback during the session, and all the thanks there at the end from you lovely people. I'm very pleased to have had this time to talk to you. You're all very welcome, and I love the comments that are coming. It's just beautiful. Thank you very much, everybody, and it's wonderful. So yeah, you've got my email, and get in touch if you like. And I can't see any questions coming in, so I guess we'll just leave it there. And I look forward to being in touch with you, communicating with you in the future. It's wonderful. So hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for listening. And I'll sign off now. Thank you. Bye, everybody.